Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 26.3 Beta 2 has been out for a few days, along with iOS 26.3 Public Beta 2. iOS 26.2 released to the public over a month at this point. But there's even more to talk about since the iOS 26.3 Beta 2 is out what's new video. We'll talk about the latest Apple news, we'll also talk about some new features, and we'll talk about the overall experience. Not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page, where at the time of this video there's over 11,000 votes and 167 comments. I've gone over all the comments to determine what the update is like for most people, so be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. Now, Apple is moving an Apple store in Santa Rosa, California to a new location later this month. The store's new home will be in the Montgomery Village Shopping Plaza, and later this month on January 23rd at 12 p.m. Pacific time, it will then open. You can see it here where it says opening Friday, January 23rd at 12 p.m. So they're moving this store from basically what looks like to be in a mall to an open plaza. So let me know if you live in that area, if you're checking it out, and what it looks like. Last week, Apple confirmed, along with Google, that they were partnering to bring a Gemini-based model to power Siri on Apple's own private cloud compute servers that they would fully manage. This week, the information has said to expect a few updates with Siri. Supposedly, we'll be seeing the initial update with more real-world answers to information, the ability to provide emotional support. It can also tell more stories and help with tasks such as booking travel and create documents and notes with relevant information. So all of those things can be expected with iOS 26.4, where we'll get even more updates with iOS 27. Apple Arcade is adding 4 new games on February 5th. You can see them on Apple's newsroom where it says popular PC franchise Civilization comes to Apple Arcade on February 5th. They're adding a few others such as Retrocade, Felicity's Door, and I Love Hue 2+. So you can see more information about this, and I'll link it in the description below. Now, there was a bit of controversy this week with Apple updating some of its services. Apple announced a new Creator Studio set of apps which combine Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, Pixelmator Pro, Motion, Compressor, and MainStage, along with the iWork apps Pages, Numbers, and Keynotes, along with Freeform. You can again see this on Apple's newsroom website, where they've combined all of these apps into a subscription service. Apple is updating all of them, bringing Pixelmator Pro to iPad and turning it into a subscription model for $12.99 per month, or $129 per year, or if you're a student, $299 per month, or $29 per year. Now, it releases on January 28th, so it's not available yet. However, if you still purchase Final Cut Pro, I wanted to clarify a few things here. If you purchase Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, or others outright, you will continue to get updates without needing a subscription. You can also still purchase them outright. However, some of the AI features may not work in the future without that subscription. You also won't get the iPad versions without a subscription. However, the other controversial thing is Apple updating the icons. Now, these icons, in my opinion, are pretty terrible and not representative of Apple at all, and I get what they were trying to do to make them look cohesive, but this is a big downgrade in design in my opinion. Not everyone agrees with me, but it seems the majority of people definitely agree. While most probably don't care too much about the icons, it does show an unfortunate direction of their design lately, but maybe they'll change this with all the negative feedback about it online. In addition to this, the Pixelmator app on iOS will no longer receive updates. So some people have said that they like these icons. The light mode icons that they show on some of this information here do look pretty terrible in my opinion, but some people like them. Of course, that's subjective, but I just think this looks more like a Microsoft icon. The Pixelmator icon doesn't look anything like Pixelmator, and so the good thing is on Mac I can change the icons after the fact and make them look better, as people have already created icon packs to replace these. So let me know what you think of them in the comments below, but it does concern me as far as the design direction Apple is taking. Apple also announced that they've updated Apple Pay in China this week. You can see the announcement here, and you can see it says Apple expands Apple Pay cross-border payment support for mainland China users. The expansion supports outbound travelers and international students to provide a simple, safe, and private payment experience around the world. Basically, it allows them to use credit cards such as Visa credit cards and debit cards issued by banks while traveling abroad. So that should be live now, and you'll see this information here. Again, I can link this in the description if you want to check it out. Apple Services had its best year in 2025, according to Eddie Q at Apple. Again, on Apple's newsroom, it says 2025 marked a record-breaking year for Apple Services. Apple's Eddie Q reflects on an outstanding year of Apple Services. It says 2025 was a record-breaking year for Apple services, marked by remarkable growth, global expansion, and continuous innovation. From Apple TV, Apple Music, and Apple News to daily essentials like Apple Pay and iCloud, we delivered enriching experiences to users worldwide. So this is something that we see Apple expand into with services, including Creative Studio. So it looks like they're pushing more and more of those models lately. When it comes to new features, well, there's a couple things worth mentioning. If we go into settings here that weren't mentioned in the What's New video, and this time if we go down to privacy and security, then go to location services and scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see there's a new update for weather wallpaper. So you now have weather and then weather wallpaper. So if you're using the weather wallpaper, it then can use your location in real time if you choose to allow it. So that's up to you to use precise location or not if you're using that wallpaper specifically. Also within the code, it seems that iOS 26.3 is set to allow carriers to enable end-to-end encryption for RCS. So this was actually found in some carrier bundle updates on X, and this is actually something we could see very soon with iOS 26.3. Hopefully we do see those as well. When it comes to iOS 26.4, we are expecting some new emoji. Typically every year around 26.4, we do get a new emoji update, and this is from the Unicode Consortium, and these are the ones we can expect. Now, I did mention emoji before, but those are ones proposed for next year or later this year. But you'll see coming soon will be a trombone, treasure chest, distorted faced, hairy creature, fight cloud, apple core, orca, ballet dancer, and landslide. So these will possibly be in the next update, and you'll be able to choose those if you'd like. So we'll probably see those very soon. When it comes to app updates this week, well, there's a couple worth mentioning. If we go into the App Store, you'll see that there's an Apple Store update bringing it to version 6.7 with various improvements and performance enhancements. So that's available now, so make sure you update it if you haven't already. Also, Shazam gets a slight update with something we've heard about for a little while. So if we go into Shazam, you'll see at the bottom of Shazam, it says Fast Forward 2026. This is something new we heard about and is now here. So it says Shazam Fast Forward 2026, and it takes a look ahead at simple things such as talent being discovered on Shazam. So it says spanning genres and borders, these rising artists are set to make waves in 2026 and beyond. So you can check that out now if you have Shazam installed. Also, if you're someone that uses Spotify, unfortunately, they're increasing the price by $1. So basically, depending on where you live around the world, they're increasing the price from $11.99 to $12.99 per month. And the same is true with students, up to $6.99 per month, increasing it by $1. So this is something we're seeing more and more subscriptions do. And I do like subscriptions, but at this point, there's so many of them, I would like to see some of them consolidated a little bit. When it comes to the iPhone 17, 17 Pro, iPhone Air, and 17 Pro Max, many people still seem to love them quite a bit. They've gotten used to the new design, and they're selling quite well, especially the Pro and the base models. We keep hearing more and more, though, about the upcoming iPhone Fold. It seems many who bought the iPhone 17 Pro series seem to be very interested in a folding iPhone, depending on what it has to offer. The latest information from YUEX1122 on the Naver blog says that the materials of the Fold are said to be titanium alloys and liquid metal. So I did expect it to be titanium, as it's supposed to be thin like the iPhone Air. It would make it very rigid having titanium, but Apple has used liquid metal in the past, and it would be nice to see them implement some of that technology in the Fold, maybe in the hinge, along with titanium for the frame. Makes a lot of sense, and we can expect that later this year. As far as releases this week, well, Apple did release a new version of Safari Technology Preview. They seem to release these every couple weeks, and we're now at version 2.3.5. It's available for macOS Tahoe and macOS Sequoia, and you can see the release notes here if you want to test out the latest versions. And they seem to be pretty thorough with their release notes compared to what we had with previous release notes with maybe AirPods updates. And speaking of AirPods updates, there was a new one this week as well. I made a separate video on. So you'll see AirPods Pro 3 8B34. That's the latest version. The case has the same version. And if you're not seeing that update, make sure that you have your AirPods charged to at least 50% as well as the case, and leave on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, leave them nearby, and they should update automatically. Now, if you're using an iPhone Air, there was also an update to the MagSafe battery pack. And now in order to see this, you connect it to the back of your phone, and then you can go into settings. It's found under General and then About. So under iPhone Air MagSafe battery, under About, you'll see the latest version. Mine have not updated yet, but the latest version is 101.0 with a build of 8B32. So once this updates, this will change, and let me know if you've updated yours already. Basically, you just connect them to your iPhone Air and let it sit. So it'll update on its own over time. Now, we don't know exactly what's in the iPhone Air MagSafe battery pack, but it could be improvements to overall connectivity, battery life, or something else, but Apple doesn't tell us. When it comes to other updates, well, I do expect an iOS 26.2.1. Based on updates from Mac Rumors they're seeing in their analytics, we could expect that as soon as next week. We thought maybe it could be this week, but it seems like it's more likely to be next week. Usually when they start seeing that, it's about a week or two out. So based off of that, and when we expect iOS 26.3, I would expect it next week at this point. They have skipped them before, but that's what I would expect so far. We can also expect an iOS 26.3 Beta 2 on Monday or Tuesday, and based off of this release schedule and last year with iOS 18.3, we had 3 betas. So we could see Beta 3 on the 19th, the release candidate, or iOS 26.3 RC on the 26th, with a public release on February 2nd. Of course, this is all subject to change. Apple could change this up, but iOS 26.4 is when we expect the Siri updates with the implementation of Google's Gemini. So we could see the first beta of that in early February. But that's what I would expect for now. Of course, with WWDC in June, probably the second week of June around the 8th, showing off iOS 27 Beta 1 for the first time, and then of course releasing in September like they normally do. But we expect this to be more of a bug fix update. So probably not a lot of updates until then. We'll just see hopefully some improvements. Now, after the firmware update to AirPods Pro 3, I've been using them extensively, whether it's editing videos, using them with the Vision Pro. I edited yesterday's or the past couple videos completely on Vision Pro using AirPods. No real issues, no disconnects, no sound degradation. Overall, they're having no issue. Despite me having lots of Bluetooth devices around, they seem to be much, much better with the latest firmware update. So I'm pretty pleased with that. And the overall sound seems to be about the same. I actually like them quite a bit. And sound quality and noise cancellation seem to be about the same as well. When it comes to the experience of iOS 18.7.3, I didn't want to mention it very much, as most people really like it, whether it's 18.7.2 or 18.7.3. I do think Apple should make 18.7.3 available to those on iOS 18.7 already. It's definitely something people should need in order for security updates to take place. So they should allow that. They should also allow us to downgrade, but I don't think we'll see that anytime soon. When it comes to the iOS 26.2 experience, well, I've been using it a little bit more on the iPhone Air lately. I do need to update this to the beta, but overall, it's okay. There's definitely some bugs, though. Based off the YouTube community poll today, it seems like the top bug fixes are that it's smoother than iOS 26.0.1. Stability is better than previous versions, although not perfect. Also, live translation seems to be working better for most. So if you use Translate and then you're using live translation, it seems like it's working better for those that utilize this regularly. Also, iPad multitasking seems to be working well. And I've been using that more and more on the iPad. I'm not a huge fan of the way they've done it, where they took out split view when you're using just regular versions in full screen. Maybe they'll bring that back, but at least the overall multitasking is much, much better than it was in early versions of iPadOS 26. The top complaints for iOS 26.2 this week are that on iPhone 16 Pro and older, people complain of the phone getting very hot, which in turn leads to battery issues. So if it's hot, it's processing a lot and using a lot of power. Also on older devices, lots of stutter from liquid glass. You'll see even on the clear icons, it's nice and smooth on the iPhone Air so far. And also black screens when opening the camera. I've experienced this before. If you go into the camera, sometimes it will just go to a black screen, but it seems to be hit or miss. I think the number one complaint is still the keyboard lag or mistypes there. So if we go into notes, and if we're typing, whether it's on the newest phones, this is an iPhone Air on iOS 26.2. Sometimes it gets it wrong. Sometimes it mistypes, even if we've typed the correct key. So this is something Apple still needs to work on that's not fixed in iOS 26.3 either yet. Also, the other complaint is RAM management with apps reloading more frequently than you would expect. CarPlay still needs to be fixed on this, and while at CES and in Uber, I mentioned this before, I was in a Ford Mustang Mach-E, I saw it disconnect and they had to reconnect CarPlay. So this is definitely an issue for a lot of people. The wallpaper bug is still there, of course. You'll see it looks pretty good on the lock screen here. Swipe up and it desaturates. So again, I've seen it reverse that as well. When it comes to iOS 26.3 Beta 2 in the experience, I used it for a few days, and battery and thermal management seem to be much, much better. We'll talk about battery life in just a moment. It's very, very smooth, especially compared to beta 1. Some people say that the animation speed seems to be a little bit slower. It's hard to say. If it is, it's very, very minimal and very minute, but it is very smooth overall. So that's great to see. However, there are bugs, and the number one reported bug is overall resprings or crashes. So maybe you open up mail or maybe you open up music, swipe home, and it crashes sometimes. So this is something people are seeing over and over. Also, the keyboard lag is still there, like I mentioned. Notifications for some people are showing up. They'll pop up on the screen, disappear, and you won't be able to get them back, even with the proper settings configured. Also, there's some visual glitches still with liquid glass, and I am hearing that CarPlay is fixed for most people, but some say it still drops or audio is cutting out. So still a little issue there when it comes to that. When it comes to overall performance, well, it seems to be a little bit choppy, like I mentioned, on iOS 26.2, but iOS 26.3 Beta 2 is mostly very stable and very smooth. The only complaint I've seen on older versions is that the app library seems like it's running at 20 Hz. However, it seems nice and smooth for me. Just the animation speed or scroll speed might be turned down a little bit. But overall, going into apps is fast. They've fixed the issue with the overall blue tint on the camera or the wrong white balance. Going into different apps is nice and fast. So no real issues whatsoever when it comes to performance so far. When it comes to heat and thermals, I really haven't experienced much heat on 26.2 on the iPhone Air or 26.3 Beta 2. But let's take a look with the thermal camera while we run benchmarks and take a closer look. So we'll go into Geekbench 6, go ahead and run benchmarks, and see what the thermals are like. We're about halfway through running benchmarks. Let's go ahead and take a look at the thermals. So if we take a look here, at the hottest point, we're at about 34.5 degrees Celsius on the 17 Pro Max running 26.3 Beta 2, and on the iPhone Air running iOS 26.2, we're usually around 40 degrees Celsius, but let's take a look at the hottest point, right around 39 or 40 degrees Celsius. So that's what we expect. Let's wait for it to complete, and then we'll take a look at benchmarks. Benchmarks completed, and you'll see with iPhone Air we have 3,605 for single core, 9,166 for multi-core on iOS 26.2. With iOS 26.3 Beta 2 on iPhone 17 Pro Max, we have 3,750 for single core, 9,762 for multi-core. Compared to what we had when we initially ran it, it's about the same. I'm not seeing much of a bump up there, but overall it can take some more time indexing in the background, but it seems like it's finished. But let me know how it compares to yours in the comments below. Now, if you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.3 Beta 2, well, if you're on Beta 1, absolutely install it. That's sort of what we're doing betas for, so install it. Make sure you report feedback in the feedback app if you're having issues, and make sure that you use that as you have additional issues. Also, if you're wondering if you should install it if you're on 26.2, I would say hold off at this point, wait for 26.2.1 or the public release of this, just because there's still some bugs there that need to be worked out. When it comes to overall battery life, well, I've been using both of these versions over the past week, so let's go ahead and take a look. First with iOS 26.2 on the iPhone Air. So on the iPhone Air, if we go to battery health here, you'll see this one has 100% capacity with 59 cycles. And if we take a look at battery life, I've been using it over the past 2 days. So yesterday, only 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I just changed back to that at that point. Today, 1 hour and 45 minutes of screen active time, 1 hour and 7 minutes of screen idle time, and I've only used 47%. Usually I get 4 to 5 hours of screen on time with the iPhone Air without a problem, and it seems to be doing that. With iPhone 17 Pro Max on 26.3 Beta 2, let's take a look here. We'll go to battery health, and you'll see I'm at 100% capacity with 55 cycles. If we go back here, go down to view all battery usage, you'll see here yesterday I had 1 hour and 20 minutes or 21 minutes of screen active time, 22 hours and 38 minutes of screen idle time from I'm not sure what, and used 30% of the battery. The day before, 1 hour and 4 minutes using 49% of the battery. So for me, the latest update on the beta hasn't been great, but most of you report that it's phenomenal. For example, 85% of those on iOS 26.3 Beta 2 report the same or better battery life than 26.3 Beta 1, with only 15% saying it's worse. However, on iOS 26.2, 65% say that it's worse. So that's a great update as far as the beta, and it seems to be much better for most people. Now, as far as the overall experience, let's take a look at some of the comments and see what you had to say. Hydrowave said, I don't have any issues with battery life on my iPhone 17 using 26.2, but the only issues are optimization. Noah Messer 5032 said, running iOS 26.2 on my iPhone 15 Pro Max. Overall pretty good performance, still some micro stutters here and there. Battery is alright but not horrible. I'm surprised iOS 26.2.1 isn't out yet. Chris Parmer 4983 said, I've been using iOS 26.2 on my iPhone 17 Pro. Battery life has been good. The standby battery drain has been great. I easily get all day battery life with moderate use. Overall, performance has been very smooth and snappy, waiting for iOS 26.2.1 to see if any refinements were made or if I just need to wait for iOS 26.3. Time will tell. Dupista said, iPhone 15 Pro Max updated from iOS 26.2 to 26.3 Beta 2. Much better experience. Maybe not in terms of battery life, but overall smoothness has greatly improved. If only they matched the battery life with iOS 18, I'd tell everyone to update without hesitation, but we're not at that level yet. Macy J. Nowicki 9479 said, went from iOS 18.7.2 to iOS 26.3 Beta 2 on my 15 Pro Max, was very hesitant to update, but finally made it. Overall, I like it, just needs refinement. Micro stutters are everywhere. Battery also could have been better. TTS292, iOS 26.3 Beta 2 is working good on my iPhone 11. I'm still amazed that after all these updates, my main device is still holding up. Even though the iPhone 11 won't get Apple Intelligence, I'm looking forward to see what Apple has in store for us in the coming months. Dr. Aditya Patil 7777 says, I'm using 26.3 Public Beta 2 on my 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max. I'm getting an average screen on time of around 12 hours on my 17 Pro Max and 9 hours and 20 minutes on my 17 Pro. The update seems to be stable as of now. However, I have faced respring bugs on both of my devices. As compared to 26.2, the battery life is quite improved. When it comes to overall storage, let's compare it with 26.2 and 26.3 Beta 2. Under iPhone storage here, under settings in general, if you scroll down to the bottom, we're seeing about the same here. iOS 26.2 is taking up 13.74 gigabytes with iOS. Apple Intelligence is 6.62 gigabytes. You'll see it's almost 14 gigabytes on iOS 26.3 Beta 2. The total size is mostly because of Apple Intelligence. So overall, it's very similar. And when it comes to overall system data, well, it's about the same. But this varies up and down and goes up and down as needed, so I would pretty much ignore it at this point. Now, when it comes to iOS 26.2, this is the rough performance patch. It still gets a C- like last week, where iOS 26.2 was a refinement of iOS 26, but really shows that work still needs to be done with this update. It fixed over 20 security vulnerabilities along with adding a transparency slider for liquid glass on the lock screen. However, over time, it seems that battery life has worsened and the issue with the camera, lag, and frame drops are still there for many, especially on older devices. When it comes to iOS 26.3 Beta 2, well, so far this is the battery fix. It gets a B+ with iOS 26.3 Beta 2. It seems Apple has clearly switched from features to optimization. It fixes battery drain and thermal issues so far, but it's still a beta with resprings here and there and some bugs here and there. However, it is a move in the right direction, and hopefully the public version is a substantial improvement for everyone. So I'm waiting to see what they do with Beta 3, the release candidate, and public release. And so that's everything with iOS 26.3 Beta 2 and iOS 26.2. Hopefully this is the last week we have iOS 26.2 and we finally get iOS 26.2.1. But let me know how your experience is so far with iOS 26 or the previous versions that you might be on as well. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.